Hello, everyone. We're going to give everyone a few minutes to join us. And I am also making sure that things are good on my end before we hop right into the content. Yeah, so we are on here, we are live. Welcome to everyone, regardless of what platform that you are joining from. We are so excited for today's workshop. We are here today to talk all about chaos engineering and why it matters. And we are so thrilled to have Violet Olds with us today. Violet is a wealth of knowledge. Violet is COO at Dark Light Chaos, skilled in over a decade of project management, passionate about civic tech, and we are just so excited to pick your brain today, learn all of the things. I highly encourage you. If you have questions, put them as comments because we can see them. And at the end, we will pop some up on the screen, as many as we can, and try to answer everything that we can at the end of this workshop. So I'm not going to take up any more of your time because we want to make sure that we have the full hour to let you do your thing. So, Violet, welcome. We're so happy to have you here today. I'm going to go ahead and exit the screen, you all, and let Violet tell you all the things. And I'll be back at the end, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Kiana. Hi, everyone. I'm Violet. Can you see my if okay, there's my screen. I was wondering where it went. So, hi everyone. I'm Violet Olds. As Kiana said, I am the Chief Operations Officer for Darklight Chaos, which is a chaos engineering consulting startup. And I am located actually not in Louisville, but just south of Louisville in Bullitt County. So, welcome everybody today. And let's talk about chaos, shall we? So, this presentation is called Welcome to Chaos, or How to Eliminate Uncertainty in Your Workloads, or, how to not get fired for causing the next production outage. So, this is what we're going to go over today. We're going to do some quick introductions so that you understand and know a little bit more about who I am and why I am doing chaos. We're going to talk about and learn about what is reliability, what is chaos, what causes downtime, I'm sorry. How can we mitigate that and how do we get there? So, about me, my name is Violet. I go by either they, she pronouns. I have kind of lived all over the United States, mostly when I was working in emergency management doing disaster recovery and traveling to places that have been destroyed by natural disasters and helping to fix them. And then I got burnt out from living in hotels and transferred into tech, and that's how I'm here. My emergency management background plays a lot into why chaos as a career field, why chaos as a company. Yeah, so that's about me. Also, fun fact, I just want to let everyone know I used to be a clown and a comedian, so you're going to see that kind of influence throughout the presentation here. So I hope everyone enjoys. All right, so reliability, what is it? Merriam-Webster defines reliability as the quality or state of being reliable and the extent to which an experiment, test, or measuring procedure yields the same results on repeated trials. But in a context of chaos engineering, reliability is the ability of a system to continue to function as expected, even in the face of unexpected disruptions. So we know that all systems are not reliable, meaning that they're not 100% all the time. But we can engineer them to be as close to 100%, but we're not ever going to get there. 100% is incredibly difficult and incredibly expensive to get to. So basically, to think about it, a definition of reliability in a context of chaos engineering is that reliability is the probability that a system will continue to function as expected for a specified period of time under a given set of conditions. So we are going to think about reliability, when we go through when we start thinking about chaos engineering as a whole, and that's really the bread and butter of what we do. So when speaking about reliability, we have something that when we talk to in the terms of downtime called the nines. So what does reliability mean to us as system operators, as DevOps engineers, or as business owners? The theoretical limit on a non-deterministic system, and that's a lot of big words, and I'll explain what that means, is 99.9995%, or what they call the five nines. And if you look at this chart here, it really explains what exactly reliability means in the context of downtime and how we want to address it in the terms of chaos engineering. So, if you have a system that, let's say, is 99.9% reliable, it means that your downtime per year is going to be 8.77 hours. And for every hour or minute that your system is down, it actually is going to end up costing you money. Um, so there is a math equation that could be done, and I could email it out afterwards because it's not in this presentation, on how to determine what your actual cost to your company is when your systems are down. Um, it's very expensive, and it's not only in terms of money, but in the terms of your brand reliability too. Think about it in the context of when Facebook goes down. It doesn't happen very often, but it does. And like, all all functioning ceases to happen when Facebook's goes down. Like, productivity at work goes down, productivity in life goes down because everyone's freaking out because they can't get access to Facebook. And it sounds really, really silly, but it's totally true. So we have to ask, are your systems reliable or are they chaotic? Because we've defined what reliability is at this point, and then if it's not reliable, it's inherently chaotic. Can our systems ever be 100% reliable? The answer is no. There is no absolutes, but the closest that we can theoretically achieve is approximately 5.5 nines, or the 99.9995%. So I just want everyone to think before we go on to the next slide. Do you think your systems are reliable, or do you think they're chaotic? And the answer really is all systems are inherently chaotic, because reliability is not a myth, but it's very hard to achieve once again at 100%. So the best that we can do is the five nines, and that's what we try to engineer to. So, chaos theory teaches us that the best approach to understanding chaos, which is complex systems with an infinite amount of variables, is to inject disruption into those systems and measure those results. So, one of the things we've done in emergency management, and I'm sure that everyone is familiar with here living in the Ohio River Valley, is um, like tornado drills, for example. We have sirens, and the sirens are tested on a monthly basis, usually on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. And when those sirens go off, we know that they are reliable systems because they've actually executed. And we know that in a time of an emergency, those sirens are going to work. Or let's take the children at school, if they actually go to school. Haha, relevant joke. So if they go, when the children are in school, they usually do fire drills, they do tornado drills. Well, this is kind of the same thing. That chaos engineering comes into your SRE team and looks at where fault could happen, and then exercises on those, and then trains on those, and then works towards fixing those problems that could cause downtime in the future, and looks at it from a more comprehensive approach to really be able to to analyze all systems, see where those breakdown points are, fix them, and then hopefully they don't fail in the future. So here it is, the cost of downtime. So do you, as an engineer, developer, manager, or owner, want to work on a team that delivers new capabilities to a business? Or do you want to work on a team that is always behind the curve fighting outages and issues? So that's what we want to think about here, is what do you want to do? Do you want to work, do the best that you can do and provide really great service and functionality to your clients? Or do you want to consistently work behind the curve and just fix bugs. So let's look at this, and let's look at this slide. So the estimate for the cost per hour of downtime is 140 to $500,000. So if you have a bigger like SaaS offering, for example, and your your system goes down, it could cost you between labor to fix the system, lost sales, lost revenue, ad revenue, if that's something that you do, just all of the things that are going to happen while your systems are down or while your app is down is going to cost money. And it's not just about that, because like I said, it affects your brand reputation. It affects the lives of your customers and employees. Let's say you're working on um, a software that delivers radiation to a cancer patient, and that's a very specific example. But what if it fails while the patient is under treatment? Those are the things we have to think about. So it could affect a myriad of things. And so we want to try to avoid downtime, and chaos is a way to be able to do that. So what causes downtime, I'm sorry, or more appropriately, when was the last time an outage notified you that it was going to happen ahead of time? It never does, right? We never know when the tornadoes are going to come. We could look at it objectively or subjectively, really. We could look at radars, and we could look at different things like barometric pressure, but we never know whether or not that tornado is actually going to strike down, and we don't know the severity of it, and we don't know the length or the time that it's going to be effectively on the ground. So it's kind of the same thing. We don't know where the tornado is going to hit, and we don't know when the outages are going to happen. And so we have to figure out, and we have to devise ways to be able to prevent those, so that money and time and possibly lives are not lost. So, how do we mitigate the issues? Well, knowing all the variables and predicting uncertainty of an incident is not inherently impossible, but it is currently beyond our capabilities. Instead, by introducing measurable things that could happen in a system of any complexity, like injecting failure, we could proactively create controlled incidentals in our systems in order to learn from and mitigate them in our production environments. So, how do we mitigate the issues? By proactively experimenting on our systems. The old adage is, when you plan to fail, you fail to plan. Or when you fail to plan, yeah, you guys have heard it before. I'm sorry, I'm getting it backwards. But that's basically the gist here. If we just kind of ignore that the shit could hit the fan, what are we going to do when the shit actually hits the fan? So chaos, it doesn't need, and thinking about production and reliability doesn't need to be the way that it currently is, where we just kind of sit around and wait for it to happen. By introducing proactive experimentation into our systems, we could be deterministic and thoughtful about eliminating uncertainty in our systems, meaning that bug fixes aren't permanent. Sometimes, if you fix one bug, it could create another bug, which creates another bug, and so on. So, it's important here to be able to think about these things ahead of time and then actually plan for failure, because it is, of course, inevitable. So, how do you recover from failure when it, like I said, inevitably happens? And it's really about stating it's really about experimentation, once again, experimentation and testing. And it can be used as a training tools as well for people who are on call and who are incident first responders. So, you could do something like doing a fire drill, where running experiments in a red blue team activity to train engineers on real world scenarios before taking those on call shifts, which will help them be prepared for the real thing when it happens. So it's like the old adage goes, practice makes perfect. If we practice and plan for failures, and then when they inevitably happen, we're already prepared to be able to pick up and move on and to get our systems back up and running. So basically, shit's going to happen, right? Are you going to be prepared? Are you going to do tornado drills, or are you going to just sit around and hope that they just don't happen? There's a concept in mechanical engineering called failure modes, effects, and analysis. And it's not unit testing and it's not integration testing, nor is it end to end testing. We're talking about catastrophic failure of your systems. So, what are some tools that we can use in the chaos field? All of the ones that I'm going to mention are open source, which means they're pretty much free to use. However, they're not very difficult to integrate into your systems, but they are a little tricky. So the first one is Litmus. There's Chaos Monkey, there's Chaos Mesh, and then there's Muxy. And like I said, all of these are all open source tools. So, what do we do here at Darklight Chaos, and why is it important to this presentation? And how do you get to a point of enveloping or integrating chaos engineering thoughts into your business? Um, it's that, well, you could hire someone like us, for example. um, but when you're thinking about it, this is things that you can do as well. It's not just by hiring us, but also things that you can do to integrate it into your own organization. It's by providing hands on training of the industry tooling that I had just mentioned, by learning and teaching the methodology of how to safely experiment on your own systems, and then learning from those incidents, um, by creating an ongoing practice to ensure regression does not occur, because regression can happen as well, because you could go and fix the problems or fix the bugs, but like I said, one bug could also create another bug. So how do we make sure that we don't fall backwards and create an more inherently chaotic system? We could also help by automating the boring parts and integrating chaos into your overall practice of this software development lifecycle. And I think that's really important takeaway is that I would absolutely recommend doing your research on chaos and figuring out how to implement it at every part of your operations when it comes to the SDLC, so that everyone on your team is thinking about how do we make things reliable and how do we make sure that our service stays reliable for not only our own selves and our own well-being, but also for our clients as well. And then also that keeps your team on the proactive side of the curve. So that's the presentation. It's relatively quick. I know that we're scheduled for an hour, but that leaves us lots of time for questions. So thank you, everybody. Does anyone have any questions?
I will start. Can you elaborate a little bit more on chaos engineering, specifically in the tech space for startups? So, like, if you don't get a handle on this, what are some of the ramifications of that?
I think the easiest way, I mean, there's obviously the technical and the financial ramifications, but I think the most important takeaway for startups in particular is to focus on reliability as part of overall branding. I mean, take, okay, so I'm an Android user and I go to the Google Play Store to download a new app. If I look at that app and all of the comments are, it crashes, it's buggy, it's laggy,
Mhm.
it's not an app that I want to download, right? So think about it from growth. Think about it from maintaining those customers that you already have. Is that you want to make sure that you have a product that's going to be there for them when they want to use it. And so by integrating chaos engineering concepts into your development, that will provide you an opportunity to have that reliable app that's not going to crash, it's not going to be buggy, and that if God forbid it does crash or if your servers go down, because they will, you have a plan in place to be actively get your systems back online and continue delighting your customers.
Mhm. And can you talk a little bit about what pieces of that? Because I'm sure there's phases. So, how do you prioritize where to start for you and what you're building?
Right. I would say somewhat close to launch, if not closer to that. Um, if you are at the very if you are at the very beginning of developing your tech offering, that is probably where you want to bring us, bring in a company like us, or bring in a chaos engineer thought person, is because we could help architecture as well. And that's really important as a part of building a whole tech project as a whole. And when you're developing your roadmap for your product people, is that when you're doing the initial architecture, we could help with that, with determining what cloud provider you want to go with, what programs could help to integrate into um, those cloud systems and your DevOps systems, and also just your the way that you structure how you develop, period. So like I said, I think it's important for everyone on the team to have this mindset. um, and I want to relate it to emergency management again, is that it's important for all of us to be prepared in the face of emergency, be it an ice storm, a snowstorm, a flood, a fire, or a tornado. We want to have our emergency numbers ready, we want to have our emergency kit ready. We know here in Kentucky that when there's a snowstorm, everybody goes out and buys their milk and bread, right?
Mhm,
So we want to make sure that you as a startup have your milk and bread ready for the snowstorm.
mhm. And I know you touched on it a little bit, but like, can we talk about a little deeper about some of those snowstorms that may occur in our space as founders that we might not be thinking of?
I think probably the easiest ways to think about is just like either bugs in your code
Mhm,
or cloud outages.
mhm.
And if I could go back to the slide about, here it is. Go back to this one. Because let's say, all right, so to get to the 99.99% or four nines, you would want to think about how you structure your cloud services and how many servers and data centers you have your information backed up on. So for 99.9%, which is the four nines, um, you'll have multiple servers in both multiple availability zones and regions, configured as either an active passive or active with supporting global load balancing infrastructure. So what that means is that you don't, if you're using AWS, you don't just have your information stored in one data center. You have it stored in multiple data centers and regions across the globe. So you wouldn't just put it in like region one in the Northeast, or whatever region covers Kentucky area. You wouldn't want to put it in just one region. You want to put one in maybe the Northeast United States, maybe one in the Southwest United States, maybe one over in Europe, one in Asia, to be able to really spread out so that if US 1 goes down, you have backups throughout the world.
Okay, so that makes a lot more sense to me as a non-technical tech founder. That makes a lot more sense. So, can you talk through a little bit? And you may or may not be able to, but it's interesting because last week I went to a luncheon, and the entire conversation was centered around speed. Speed as a founder or an entrepreneur, and how speed equates to trust for clients. The quicker that you're able to produce or perform, the more trust that client puts into you. And so, I think that we all know that something like chaos engineering can ultimately affect our money, right? We're going to lose
Mhm.
out on money if we lose out on customers. We're also going to be losing out on money if we are putting our finances in inappropriate resources.
Right.
And so, can you think about a company or two that has gotten this right, and a company that has gotten it very wrong that we might be familiar with?
Um, so in the history of chaos engineering, it is kind of the baby of Netflix. So if you want to think about a company that does it right, Netflix, because
Hmm.
they are kind of the hub of where this professionally really started to take off.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe the Chaos Monkey app actually was a tool that was developed by Netflix and then they open sourced it. So Netflix really does it right. Like, how often do you see Netflix outages?
Not very often, but I can think of a time when it went very wrong for someone on Netflix. And I don't know if the audience, I'm getting ready to tell my guilty pleasures over here, y'all. But if you watch Love is Blind,
Hmm.
the most recent season, they wanted to do like this whole go live on the reunion thing. And there were so many people who were tuned in that they couldn't get it to stream.
Right.
It crashed, and it crashed for the entire day. So they did not get to stream it at all. So
Hmm.
that's a time that I feel like I can think of that some of us may be familiar with, that it went very, very wrong.
Right.
Not on Netflix part, but on the other party's part.
Right, and it depends on what platform they were using for streaming as well, but that's the one of the things that Chaos also looks at is that if you're like an e-com business, for example, and you're let's take that that weird viral marketing company Mischief because I'm a huge fan of them and they have those really dumb big red boots, right? Right? So let's say you're a company and you're about to launch your own big red boot. How do you
Mhm,
know that your website's going to be able to handle that traffic after this your product, your big red boot went viral? So you know like a million people want to buy this. You only have 1,000 available. How do you handle that traffic?
mhm, mhm,
And so that's one thing that Chaos can help with. And because it's about if you are going to experience high traffic, you're going to want to, once again, use the cloud to use load balancers and things like that to separate out your data into different data centers and to have people come in from different places and then the traffic is then balanced based upon where they are and what regions and it gets really complicated, but by having a multi-region, a multi server approach, you could handle that traffic a lot better, and that's something that Chaos will teach you how to do. But a company that doesn't get it right, I mean, I'm going to pick on Twitter or X, whatever it's called these days, because they're trying to do a lot. And, whatever thoughts and feels I might have about it, I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible here. But like, let's say, let's look at when they wanted to roll out their new audio streaming platform with the launch of Ron DeSantis's presidential campaign, and a lot of people listened in, and it consistently crashed. And
mhm,
they are having issues with crashing because um, they're valuing things that don't spell out reliability, right? And then
mhm,
we've seen that a lot since the company was bought and firing a lot of the reliability team and things like that, not paying Google Cloud and
mhm,
Google Cloud canceling their services. So there's a whole
mhm.
case study that I could write based on the new Twitter, the new X, and how it flies in the face of what we would want to practice in chaos.
Okay, that's thank you for that. So when we talk about how to allocate resources for this, as founders, we have limited money a lot of the times. We're trying to be very intentional about where we put our money. So is this something where the investment can constantly change? It sounds like you would work kind of backwards, foreshadowing and trying to make sure things are in place before you experience that type of traffic or what have you. But is this something that can be rolled out in phases so that you're not allocating your funds all at one time? Does it fluctuate? Can you pull away when traffic is dying down a little bit during certain seasons? Or like how does that work, being that us as founders are trying to be very intentional with how we spend our money?
Right. I'm going to equate this back to emergency management as well, right? Because we have people who are in this profession that we trust and that we rely on. And I'm not talking about first responders like police officers and firemen or firefighters. I'm talking about actual emergency managers, the people who write the plans, the people who write the grants to be able to to be able to do things like build seawalls on the Ohio River so that it doesn't flood, you
Mhm,
know. it's a year-round practice because the inevitable can happen at any time. Like, we don't know what's going to happen from one minute to the next, and that's our absolute reality. Like, I know I'm going to a meetup tonight, but I don't know what's going to happen at the meetup, right? So I think it's something that you really have to think about throughout the whole life cycle of software development, but you don't actually have to do anything specifically about it, but you have to keep it in your mindset because, a storm could come and knock out your power, and then what do you do if your server is in your back office? So, you have to be prepared at all times for any kind of thing, like even if your funders back out or you get a bad PR message, or I don't know, yeah, any number of things could happen. And so you want to think about it um, really as organically as possible. And that's not just about your technical systems, but it's about the whole of your business too. You always want to have a contingency plan. There
Mhm.
always needs to be a plan B, regardless of what, I don't know, some LinkedIn hustlers might tell you. Um, you always want to have a plan B because when something happens, what are you going to do? Right?
Mhm.
So it's really about thinking about that holistically and really integrating it at all lines of your business.
Mhm. And so, and this is my final question personally. I don't see any from the audience, but it's still open to you all who are viewing. If you would like to ask a question, just put it in the comments and we'll be able to see it. But um, so, as founders, can you leave us with some things to think about when we're working with developers? Say, for instance, we're just not at the point where we have the funds to work with someone from a chaos engineering standpoint yet. Um, what are some things that we can think about when working with developers that can help us mitigate these things slightly early on if we don't have the biggest audience, but just in case we get like a slight surge that will propel us forward to being able to work with a company like yours. But in the beginning, if that's not an option for us, what are some things that we can be thinking about as we work with developers to kind of help us out with something like this?
I think it's doing research on reliability and really kind of thinking about what level of risk you want to have using this nines chart. So we
Mhm,
know that 4 nines, 99.99% reliable, is kind of like 4 and 5 nines is really kind of the sweet spot. It's
mhm,
really actually 4 nines and a five at the end, 99.995% is really where you want to go. So if you look at this chart, and you could do some research, or you could, send me a LinkedIn message and I'll be more than happy to schedule some time with you that um and I'll copy this from my speaker notes here, that 99.9%. How come it won't let me write a comment?
if you go up to comments, you
Mhm.
will be able to. But if not, feel free to just send it to me and I'll send it out to
All
everyone.
right, I'm sending it to you now.
Yep.
So, what you want to do is think about this part. You want to make sure that if your systems are going to be cloud based, which they probably are, you want to make sure that you spend a little bit of money on getting multiple regions for your servers. I mean, even if you get two, one in US, one in Europe, that's better than nothing. So trying to spread out your where your data is held, and where your not your operations, but I guess your tech operations, where those are held and where all your systems are located as far as cloud base goes, you want
Mhm.
to spread that out into multiple locations. So really the easiest thing that you could do is just to, you know, use two servers in two different regions, preferably in two different countries
Okay.
or two different regions of the or of the world.
Mhm. All right. That's very good information to have, and it's something that can easily, be relayed to developers. So I hope that everyone took note of that. But to close us out, I really want to thank you for giving us this information. You gave us a whole lot to think about. And we do work with a lot of non-technical tech founders, and this is great information to relay either to your developers or the CTOs and the technology people on your team to make sure that you are thinking about these things as you build out. Because the last thing we want to do is build something that does not work and have to implement money to fix it.
Right.
Um,
And
so
it's always more expensive to fix it than it is to mitigate it. I
yeah.
promise you that, in both technology and infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really appreciate you giving us all of this information. To everyone who's watching, thank you all for tuning in. I will make sure that in the follow-up email, you know how you have a link to connect with Violet on LinkedIn. You'll have a link to join the Amplify community. You will also see some other links and resources that we have for you all to take advantage of. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to let us know. We can pass it along to Violet, but as I stated, we will also make sure that you have the link to connect with Violet on LinkedIn so you can ask any questions that you may encounter as you are building out the things that you're building, or if you've already built it, what you are working on. Violet can probably answer some questions about how you can go back and make sure that you have some things in place. So we really appreciate you joining us today. We appreciate everyone who tuned in. If you want to go back and rewatch this or share it with someone in your network, it does live on the Amplify Louisville YouTube channel. So you can find this recording encore there to watch at any time to gain this information if you need a refresher, or you find someone who talks about something like this and they might need this information too. So we really appreciate you all. And I want to encourage you before we leave that we do have another workshop tomorrow that is all about UX with Shala. So you don't want to miss that. That's at 11:30. So we'll be right back here wherever you're watching for that. So we appreciate you all. Thank you so much. I want to make sure we don't have any questions before we leave. Yes, thank you to Jamie, who's watching on LinkedIn, for that comment. Jamie says thank you. This gives them very great information to put in their back pocket for their next IT project. So thank you all. We appreciate you, and I will hopefully see you all here tomorrow. Bye. Thank you, Violet.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.